This is part 7 of my series of, well, I wouldn't really call them tutorials, it's just showing you how I make a steam locomotive for Trains Railway Simulator. This is loco number 5 from the Ballymena and Larne narrow gauge railway. And up to now I've been making a variety of meshes and also beginning the animation of the driving wheels and the cylinders and all the rest of it. But there is a fundamental mistake that I've made, and which I've now corrected, but which I want to show to you now. And that is, I've made the locomotive so that the front end in the top down view, oops, let's get the top view, is pointing towards the top of the screen. So we're looking down on the locomotive, so it's a top down view onto the locomotive, but the locomotive is pointing up towards the top of the screen, and this is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to have the locomotive pointing down, and this is a strict requirement within Trains for when you're exporting into Trains, that the leading point of any vehicle is down the bottom here, and the bogies are arranged this way, so the cylinders, the whole thing should be turned round. So if you've been following this up to now, there you are. I've made a fundamental mistake. Very easy to do, but even so I should have known better. And what should have tweaked, what I should have realized is that when I animated these the axles there, if I turn on animation so that it's running correctly, the loco's turning to the top, and when I actually animated those dummies, let's go back into the top down view and turn the animation, these dummies, instead of dragging the animation downwards, I had to take it upwards, which at the time it rang a little bell in the distance, but I didn't think of much of it. But of course it is wrong, and your loco will act completely incorrectly in Trains. So what I've done is, so to stop that, is over here we see we've got version 1.1, and the copy of that is 1.2. So what I've actually done is I've recreated the whole thing, just copied it over, turned it round, and then redid the animation to the point where I last left it. And this is it. It looks exactly the same, but if we look in the top down view, you'll see that the cylinders are at the bottom of the screen. And I was rather led astray by using the perspective view. It was actually round that way, it should be round that way. And the other key indicator always is that the cylinders, the front of the locomotive, should always, in the right view, it'll go right left. If it's in the left view, it's going left right, and that's incorrect. So what we want is in the right view, that is looking at the right hand side of the locomotive. So there we are. So now I've just recreated most of that animation, but I've recreated it all to the point where I'd left it in the last tutorial, and I just now need to animate the offside connecting rod there, and it's the one on this side here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into this view because I just find it convenient, and what I need to do is to keep all of the bits that I need, just the bits that I need for the animation. And this means it is this one, Conrod 03, because I just renamed the ones that were doing the horizontal connecting rods. And if we look here, there it is on the select objects, and if you display the subtree, you can see the objects which are controlled by it. That's those 3 rectangles there. So let's select those as well. Okay, so that's just that little bit of the animation, and then I need my guides. So these were the 2 pieces, the 2 cloned pieces of the piston. It's the same this side as well, and I can hide all the rest. So I'm just left with that. And now if I go into my right view here, and what I can see excuse me, what I can see is the dummy controlling this connecting rod. So if I play the animation, it's flying about all over the place. So now what I'm going to do is to bring it back so it's constantly, that top corner is touching the edge of the connecting rod. So as before, I just select the dummy, Conrod 03 as it happens, turn on animation, go to the first frame. I'm going to step through the frames like I did before, and with the rotation tool, and it's not constrained to 5-degree increments, just take it up. So I'm repeating what I did in the last tutorial here, but I think it deserves showing again. Anyway, this is the way I make it, so that's what I'm doing. I'm doing real-time creation. I'm not doing anything. The only thing I did that I haven't video for you is that I just corrected that mistake of making the locomotive point by pointing it up front of the locomotive to the top of the screen as opposed to the bottom of the screen. That's the only thing I've done that I haven't recorded on the video. It didn't take very long, but of course I had to make sure everything, I deleted all of the animation, and and when I turned everything around 180 degrees, I then X-formed everything and made sure all of the alignments were correct. The pivots were all correctly aligned, which is quite a quick job to do because you just select everything and then use the pivot business effect pivot only and adjust that. So here we go. So I'm just stepping away just fairly roughly, just get it close, because then I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to position it. And remember, it's the dummy that you move, not the things that are attached to it. Always remember that. Any animation, you animate the dummy, and whatever the dummy does, everything that's attached to that dummy, linked to that dummy, will follow on. That's why that subtree is so important. That's why the hierarchy is so important. And I'll come back to that at a later stage of the model. So I'm just getting on here now. There's a sort of a what do you call it, cathartic sort of experience doing this. At least I know I'm doing it in the correct direction now, whereas before it was hopeless. And that would have been hopeless as well. You would have found that everything was reversed. I'm not even sure how it would have worked on it within trains. I suspect that if you told it to go forward, it would go back, and vice versa. And also the front connecting point for coupling up vehicles would be at the back. So it was in quite a mess. So anyway, it finally dawned on me what I'd done wrong. It's only taken me, what is this, number 7, to work out what I was doing. And there we are, we're back to 0. And 0 itself is wrong, so I'm going to have to move that up as well. So that's where it needs to start from. So let's just have a quick look. Yeah, it's bouncing about a bit, so I'm now going to go back to 0. And I'm keeping this selected, but it's going to be out of the screen. I'm going to zoom right in, and now keeping on that, I'm going to adjust it down here. That's too far. You sometimes get this strange. Let's move it down to what's it meant to be if it's coming down? 6? No, wrong way. As always. 4.5. 0.45. There we are. So, and now what do we do here? And here we go, just working it frame by frame. Let's go 4.88. No, 4.86. 5. Let's try 5. Let's try 5.05. No, that was the wrong way. So it's minus 4.95. With 3.5. 8. 1.5. worry about the sequence of these numbers, because as long as the animation looks correct, then you're going to do alright. Now we're over into positive numbers. Alright. I never remember which is the correct way. So here we are, halfway through the sequence, through the animation. It really is worth all of the effort at this stage to get the animation correct. It's not looking good. And sometimes when I've done this and I find some pieces sort of wriggling about a bit, you know, it does mean you have to go in and do quite a bit of alteration to each frame in the animation in order to get the effect that you want. But believe me, it is worth it. It really does look good once you get the animation right. And when you do succeed in doing that, then you find that your confidence grows very substantially, and you're willing to take on much more ambitious projects. Certainly start off with Stephenson's valve gear, hopefully with a horizontal cylinder, and then once you've mastered that, move on to Valschertz. And if you can do that one, which actually isn't that too bad, because you can't actually, one of the problems with trains courses is you can't, or at least I've never seen any locomotive that is able to, let's have a look at that. Yeah, that looks okay. Locomotive that's able to, it's animated so that when you change into reverse, the actual reversing lever works down in the valve gear. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe there is a loco like that. I've yet to come across it, but if anybody has seen one and would like to explain to me how you do it, then I'd be very pleased to hear from you. There we go. So we've now got our coupling rods and driving rods or connecting rods or whatever they are all animated okay. So now just the next job we want to do is to get the piston lined up with that and moving backwards and forwards through the cylinder. So I'm going to stop that. Always make sure you take it back to 0. We want to work in 0 frame, and we're going to be working here in this position, in this view. And first thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to substantially increase the length of the piston rod, because it's too small at the moment. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to group them together. These are my guides. They're at the same angle, and you remember I told you to write down the angle exactly when you move these, and guess what I did, or rather what I didn't do. I didn't set the angle, I didn't record the angle. So there you go. It's all very well saying these things, but unless you do it yourself, it just doesn't mean much. So I think I'm just about nudge it up a bit more. There we are. So for this cylinder, I'm just going to edit the vertices because they need to be nice, and it needs to be nice and long. There we go. And having done one, let's have a look which one it is. Yep. What I can now do is I can take the group, just trying to pick up the group. Is it going to distinguish it for me? There it is, there's the group. I'm just going to move it up out of the way. In fact, that's where I'm going to get my angle from. So that's this one here, over here. Okay, let's pick that one up there. Let's make sure it is centered. There we go. Actually, let's make sure it's still aligned. Okay, and then I'm going to clone it, and I'm just going to put it over on the other side, and it's just the lateral position that I need on that, and I'm going to give it a different colour so I can identify it. And then I'm going to pick up the blue one and delete it. That's the old one. So we've now got two piston rods, which are hopefully are the correct length, and we've got the connecting rod here, or whatever rod it is here. And so that's the one we're going to work with. Let's turn this around the right way. We're going to work with this, and we're going to leave those two visible, and we're going to hide the rest. And although it's hidden, the dummy is still working perfectly okay. So if I was to play the animation, there it is. There's our rod moving up and down. Let's take a slurp of coffee. Okay, so take that back to 0, and on the hide by name, I want plane number 1 because that's my side view. There it is. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this piston even further until it's actually touching there, just to make it a bit easier for me. So so the way I'm going to do that is my good old clone command. I love using the clone command to give me an extra copy, which I will colour differently. Let's make it red, and it just then is going to give me a position. I'll bring it down there. There we are. It's as if I stretch that cylinder, but I'm going to now take this one, pick up the vertices at that end, and take them on down to here. I'm still not worrying about the side position of the end of this con rod. So now I want to pick up the red one. There it is. I can see it's the red one because it's up here. And delete it. So now what I've got to do is I've got to animate the piston and keep it in position there, I think is where we want to go. Let's just have a look at the way yeah, I think we'll be alright. But before I do that, I'm going to clone this again. Colour it red. I shouldn't have deleted that red one, it was handy. I'm going to lift it up, and I'm going to use it as a guide so that this upper edge of the green one is always on the edge of the red one, and that's going to be my guide up here. So let's go up to here, and now we're going to do a dummy, helpers, dummy, and it's going to be B&LR Piston 01. Very inventive. And I'm going to position it there on the piston. Doesn't really matter where I position it, I suppose, on the piston. So it's not on the piston, it's on the con rod. There's the piston. Get it right. Okay, so there it is, and I'm going to link this, the piston itself, to there, piston 01. It's just displaying the stuff that's not been hidden, and that's what I'm going to alter. So now I'm going to animate that, and I'm going to use just this window. And so here we go. So I've got to bring this back. So I'm using both X and Y. And I'm just doing it freehand. So you can see there, frame by frame, I'm now following the movement of the con rod, and I'm keeping the correct position by using that as my guide, and I'm only moving the dummy, I'm not moving the piston itself. And now and I shouldn't have to go back on each frame and adjust this unless there's some real serious wobble on the piston, which would look really weird. Either means the loco needs desperately to go into the shops, or it's about to fall apart. Now, unlike with the rotation, when you're dealing with rotation, dealing with this sort of lateral, vertical and lateral movement, vertical and horizontal movement, you're not worrying about the positions. You're simply doing it by eye, and if need be, it's the wrong one, move it over, on to the next one, frame 13, and frame 14, and frame 15. I often listen to the radio, that is drama or comedy, or a piece of classical music, usually Baroque if I'm doing this, and actually it can be quite calming. Anybody who's ever successfully made any model, a so-called real model, that is in the real world, as it were, you can become completely absorbed in making it. And it's the same with this, it becomes totally absorbing, and well, it takes you a while. You do see the results fairly quickly, and I was never any good at making models. I used to model in N gauge and 009, and the results were never as good as I wished them to be, basically because I just haven't got the ability. I felt I didn't have the ability. Anyway, they were never as good as I wanted them to be, and so some years ago I gave up any model making, and then a few years after that I ordered up a cheapy copy of Train's UTC, and that was it. I was hooked. First of all, mucking about creating layouts and trying to see what I could do, what I couldn't do with that, and then I wanted to have more than just the models that came with the pack, and so it was Train's 2004 when that came out. That was the one when I first started making models with 4 trains, and I actually teamed up with another trainser, a guy called Ricky Sykes, and between us we cracked how to do this. We taught ourselves how to do this, and it was very fulfilling. Unfortunately Ricky's no longer with us, but in the time that we spent working together doing this, it was very enjoyable indeed. We both really appreciated it, and you know, it's a way of model making which is both relaxing, and I find almost immediately you begin to see the results of your work. It does become really addictive, and so there we are. That should be now the piston, this piston here, running. There we are, and it's pushing out the back. So what I'm going to do is, it's pushing out the front of the cylinder, so it's not very good. So I'll just stop it. Where are we? Stop. Back to 0, and let's have a look and see in this one. In the right hand view, let's see how much it's pushing out. Okay. So make sure you go to 0, and now this time I'm going to alter the mesh of the cylinder, and just make sure I pick up the right one, because we've got all sorts of bits of cylinder here. Here it is. Come back over here. I mean, there is a number there, cylinder 55. I suppose I should have renamed it something like left hand cylinder piston or something. I don't know. It's not a bother. And because I've got the piston on the other side, I can just use that as a guide. So I'm going to take that down and then zoom right in, make sure I'm in the right place. That's it. And now let's have a look and see if it punches through the end of the cylinder. No, it doesn't. It stops short, which is quite good. Otherwise it wouldn't be a very good locomotive, would it? Let's just check again. Nice and big. Set it going. There we are. It's hidden. It's actually operating inside the cylinder itself. And now I'm going to do the other one, and that is where I'll end this tutorial. Maybe I'll do a little bit more. No, I'll do a little bit more, but what I want to do is to hide some of this stuff. And every time I hide these, it reminds me why I always do the bogies first and then move on to the body. So what do I need to do here? Oh, I know, I need to go up here, and just as we've got this one, BR piston 01, now I need to make another dummy, and I'm going to call this BR piston 01A, and you'll see why in a minute, because this one I think should be called piston 02, because you tend to do number 1 over here, number 2 over here, so now that one can become piston 01. Shouldn't affect any of the, no, it doesn't affect any of the movement. Okay, back to the 0, and let's position this on here. And what I need to do now is hide some of the bits which are just obscuring the animation, so I'm going to hide that. I've got some nuts there. Hide that. And so the other bits that I can probably hide is most of this, and this, and other bits and pieces. It's this piece I just, so we can hide that out the way, and let's have a look in the right hand view. There we are. So now I need to bring my guide back down until it's just sitting on the top there. There we are. And I just need to bring this cylinder here back so it's in position for the first frame. Let's make that a big screen, and it needs to be there. Okay, and then I'm going to link this to BR Piston 01. That's this one, the dummy. And now let's just have a quick look at the animation. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not worried about this at the moment. Let's go back to that and let's proceed to animate it. Number one, remember I'm using the dummy to control it. It's so easy to start off controlling the mesh, picking up the mesh rather than the dummy, and you just have to go back and start again. Put the mesh back to where it should be, and I think even in the past I've had to delete the mesh and clone it from another one because it still has the animation attached to it, as it were. And you never want to animate the mesh, you always want to animate the dummy. Can't stress that enough. Let's make sure it wasn't in the right place at the middle. And check number 8, a bit shy there. It just means it's going to look like it's wobbling, which is never the best. There we are. Oops. 12, and we're starting to come back again. And 13. And because the piston has been textured with a nice shiny texture, it really will, you'll be able to see it quite clearly as it's moving in and out of the cylinder, which gives a really good effect. After all, that's what it's meant to be doing. And at some point the other end of this piston is going to be punching through the front end of the cylinder, so I'm going to trim it back once I've got this aspect of it done. We're almost there now. And 21. This is as it happens, with a cup of coffee cooling beside me. Very nice. And frame 25, frame 26, almost there. Frame 27, back at the beginning, a completely circular motion. And 29, and 30, which should be virtually the same as 0. So 0 I'm going to change. Okay, so let's have a quick look at our animation, see what we've done. There it is. Yeah, it's moving about a bit, but that's quite okay. So let's have a look how far we need to trim that back. Radio, so we'll come back to 0, where it actually is already punching out, and this time we're going to select the cylinder, pick up the vertices and take them back, and we'll use that as our guide. So it's not punching through the end or falling out the end that side. And let's just run our animation again. Make sure it stays within the cylinder. There we are. And let's have a look in the perspective view. Okay. Go to 0, top down view, and we're now going to crank. We're going to alter this. We're going to pick up this one and move it so that it's in the correct position. Just make sure it's still animating. Okay, yeah, it's animating fine. And then we're going to pick up this, pick up the vertices. Yeah, we want to move them in the x-axis, bring them over, center there, and there's our crank. It's cranked out, so it's connected. Take it back, unhide all, and we want to do the other side. Here it is. Pick this one up, move it over in the x-axis only, so it's centered, and then move this over to here, position it in the middle by R. There we are. So that's that finished, and we can now say that the piston is at least now connected up to the rest of the motion. And if we have a quick look in our model, you can see we've got a number of these dummies moving all around. It all looks very impressive. You don't see any of those in trains, but what you do see is the fact that the piston's working in and out. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to take the tutorial for this tutorial, or this session. So I've corrected the animation, and I've animated the pistons and corrected their length and got them running okay. So there we are. So please subscribe to my channel. It's free, there's no obligation. I don't know who you are, I don't contact you, I don't send you emails or anything like that. Please leave a comment if you wish to, or questions or anything like that, and please give me a thumbs up if you liked it.